You're at your brother's wedding, 200 guests watching, when suddenly his bride publicly announces you're giving them your house as a wedding gift. Plot twist. You never agreed to that. What happened next will leave you speechless. Hey everyone, before we dive into this absolute rollercoaster, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to fight for what's rightfully yours against your own family, smash that like button because this story is going to hit different. So there I was, 29 years old, living my best life in the house my grandmother left me. But apparently my new sister-in-law had other plans. Plans that ended with her slapping me in front of everyone at her wedding reception. Yeah, you heard that right. Let me paint you the picture of how this nightmare began. My grandmother Eleanor wasn't just family, she was my person. From the time I was little, I spent every weekend at her gorgeous Victorian house. We'd garden together, cook together, and she'd tell me stories on that old porch swing. Meanwhile, my older brother James, he couldn't be bothered, too busy with sports, friends, basically anything that didn't involve spending time with what he called an old lady. Fast forward to adulthood. I became a teacher, bought a place 20 minutes from Grandma's house, and visited her constantly. James, he'd show up twice a year, stay for an hour, check his phone the whole time. When she got sick 5 years ago, guess who became her caregiver? Not the golden boy who was too busy with his banking career. I scaled back to part-time work, drove her to every appointment, managed her medications, held her hand through chemotherapy. James visited exactly twice during her entire illness. Twice. When Grandma passed 3 years ago, the will reading was interesting. She left me the house, her savings, everything that mattered. James got the car, which he immediately sold, and some cash. My parents were shocked. My brother was furious. But honestly, I wasn't surprised at all. My mum lost it. That house should go to both children, she kept saying. But Dad, bless him, just said, Eleanor knew what she was doing. The house meant everything to me. It wasn't about money, it was about connection, about preserving her memory. I moved in and spent every spare moment restoring it to its former glory. New paint, refinished floors, updated plumbing, all while keeping that historical charm intact. Then James started getting ideas. He'd drop by and make comments like, "This place must be worth 400K now. If you sold it, we could both get houses." I'd just stare at him like, "Dude, this is my house." But everything changed when Catherine entered the picture. James met her at some fancy bank event. Catherine Parker, 32, marketing executive at a luxury real estate firm. Designer everything, perfect smile, and my parents ate it up immediately. Red flag number 1. The first thing she asked about wasn't my relationship with Grandma or the house's history. It was the market value. Their relationship moved at lightning speed. Engaged in 3 months, wedding planned in 6. And Catherine's obsession with my house grew stronger every day. She'd show up uninvited, claiming she was in the neighborhood. She'd walk through my rooms with this calculating look, suggesting improvements to maximize the property's potential. Then came the big ask. Wouldn't it be perfect if we could buy this from you? You could get something more suitable for a single person. I shut that down fast, but Catherine wasn't the type to take no for an answer. The pressure campaign began. My mum became Catherine's biggest ally, calling me daily. James is the man of the family. He needs a proper home. You're being selfish, hoarding that house. What would Grandma think? Here's what killed me, my mum would say. That's not how families work. Families share. But where was this sharing mentality when I was alone caring for Grandma for 2 years? Things escalated when I came home from work one day to find Catherine giving a tour of my house to strangers. She'd used James's old key and was showing these people around like she already owned the place. When I confronted her, she broke down in fake tears, wailing about how I was ruining everything. Turns out she'd been planning this for months. She'd invited people to a housewarming party at my address. She'd been telling everyone they were moving into the family property. She'd even hired contractors and put down deposits for renovations on a house she didn't own. The final family dinner before the wedding was brutal. Everyone ganged up on me about my wedding gift to James and Catherine. When I refused, my mum threatened to cut me off from the family entirely. First, walked out feeling completely alone. Wedding day arrived with perfect weather, because of course it did. Catherine got her fairy tale ceremony with 200 guests and crystal chandeliers. I stood there in my bridesmaid dress, trying to be supportive despite everything. Then came the reception speeches. Catherine grabbed the microphone for an impromptu speech. She thanked everyone, praised my parents, and then dropped the bomb. "Samantha has a very special wedding gift for us," she announced to the entire room. "She's giving us her beautiful Victorian home to start our married life." The room erupted in applause. All eyes turned to me. Catherine shoved the microphone in my face, that sweet smile masking pure evil. "Would you like to say a few words about your gift?" This was it, the public ambush. Give in or become the villain in front of everyone they knew. I stood up, legs shaking, and said as calmly as I could, "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not giving them my home." Dead silence. Catherine's mask slipped completely. "How dare you, you selfish, ungrateful." And then her hand flew across my face. The sound echoed through the ballroom. Gasps everywhere. Someone dropped a glass. I stood there, cheek burning, tears welling up from the humiliation, not the pain. My mum rushed over, but not to comfort me. She grabbed my arm and hissed, "Don't make a scene. Just leave quietly." "James?" He sat frozen, watching his wife assault his sister without saying a word. I gathered what dignity I had left and walked out past 200 staring faces. Got in my car and drove home, still in my bridesmaid dress, mascara running, heartbroken. I thought my life was over. I had no idea it was just beginning. The next morning, my phone was blowing up. 27 missed calls, 43 messages. My family was furious, but something interesting happened. Wedding guests started reaching out, saying something felt off about Catherine's story. That's when I learned Catherine had been lying about everything. She'd told people I'd promised the house months ago, that I was mentally unstable, that I'd manipulated Grandma's will. She'd even called my boss, trying to get me fired. But here's where it gets good. I hired a private investigator. The report was devastating. Catherine had a history of this exact behavior. She'd been engaged twice before, both times to wealthy men, both engagements ending mysteriously after financial losses. Her previous engagement, almost identical situation involving a grandmother's property. I called the previous almost mother-in-law Margaret, who said, "I've been waiting for this call. I knew Catherine would try this again." Catherine wasn't after love or even status. She wanted assets, property, things she could control or sell, and she didn't care who she destroyed in the process. Armed with evidence, I started my counterattack. My dad was the first to see the truth. When James returned from his honeymoon, we sat him down with all the proof. His face went pale as he read about Catherine's debt, her lies, her previous victims. "She told me your house was definitely our wedding gift," he said quietly. "She had me believing you'd promised it." Catherine went into damage control mode when confronted.
Tears, denials, more lies. She even tried to negotiate with me, asking what it would take to back off. I recorded that conversation. When James heard his wife's true voice, threatening me and revealing her real motives, the spell finally broke. He filed for annulment, citing fraud. Catherine made one last desperate social media play, painting herself as the victim of family conspiracy. But too many people had seen the evidence by then. Her carefully constructed image crumbled. She moved away to start fresh with a new target. James began rebuilding his life and paying off the massive debt she'd accumulated. Our family slowly healed. 6 months later, I was sitting on my grandmother's porch swing, coffee in hand, roses blooming in the garden she'd planted. The house was more beautiful than ever, and more importantly, it was still mine. My brother comes by regularly now. We're rebuilding trust slowly. My dad helps with home projects. Even my mom drops by occasionally, though she still makes passive-aggressive comments about my curtains. The greatest lesson wasn't about property rights or family obligations. It was about standing up for yourself when everyone's telling you you're wrong, about recognizing manipulation disguised as family loyalty, about having the courage to fight for what's rightfully yours, even when it costs you everything. Sometimes the hardest battles are with the people closest to us, but sometimes those battles are exactly the ones most worth fighting. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to stand your ground against family pressure? Ever dealt with someone who tried to manipulate you through guilt or social pressure? Drop your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe because boundary setting stories like this one are exactly why we need to support each other. Remember, you deserve to have your boundaries respected, even by family, especially by family. Thanks for listening to my journey, and I'll see you in the next one.